The annual Henderson family dinner was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking against expensive china as my relatives competed to showcase their achievements. I sat quietly at the far end of the table, watching my sister Audrey command everyone's attention, just like she always had. "Another record quarter," she announced, adjusting her designer watch. "The partners are already talking about making me the youngest senior VP in the firm's history." My mother beamed with pride. "That's my girl. Harvard Business School really does open all the right doors." I suppressed a smile thinking about the email I'd received that morning. The one confirming that my company, Nova Technologies, had just been valued at $4.2 billion. The one explaining that Forbes wanted to feature me in next month's issue. "And what about you, Alexandra?" Aunt Patricia's voice dripped with fake concern. "Still doing that, what do you call it? That internet thing." "Software development," I corrected quietly, though I knew it wouldn't matter. To them, I was just the family disappointment, the one who'd turned down a real career to chase some tech dream. "Right," Audrey smirked. "Because that's totally the same as managing billion-dollar portfolios." If only she knew that my latest algorithm had revolutionized artificial intelligence trading. That her firm's recent successes were partly due to software my company had developed. But I kept quiet, maintaining the facade they'd grown so comfortable with. "Alexandra," my father sighed, swirling his expensive bourbon, "when are you going to get serious about your future? You're 28. It's time to stop playing with computers and join the real business world." I thought about the acquisition offers sitting in my inbox: Google, Microsoft, Apple. Each one worth more money than my entire family's combined net worth. But they didn't know that. They'd never bothered to ask. "I'm doing fine, Dad." "Fine." Audrey laughed. "You live in a rented apartment and drive a used car. Meanwhile, I just bought a penthouse in Manhattan." With Mom and Dad's help, I couldn't help adding. The table went silent. Audrey's face flushed red. "At least I'm successful enough to deserve their help," she snapped. "What have you accomplished?" "A tiny startup that nobody's ever heard of." My mother jumped in, trying to smooth things over. "Girls, please. Alexandra, honey, there's no shame in admitting you need a new direction. Your sister could probably get you an entry-level position at her firm." "That's right," Audrey said, her voice dripping with false generosity. "I'm sure we could find something suitable. Filing maybe? Data entry? You're good with computers after all." More laughter around the table. Even my father chuckled. "I'm happy where I am," I said softly. "Happy being a nobody?" Audrey shot back. "Face it, Alexandra. You'll always be a nobody. Some of us are built for success and some of us just need to accept our limitations." My phone buzzed in my pocket. Probably another message from Forbes, finalizing details for tomorrow's announcement. They'd chosen me as their cover story. 30 under 30. Meet the youngest self-made billionaire in tech. "I should go," I said, standing up. "Early meeting tomorrow." "Meeting?" Aunt Patricia scoffed. "In that shabby little office you rent?" What they saw as a shabby office was actually just a front. Nova Technologies' real headquarters occupied 3 floors in the city's most prestigious building. But they'd never bothered to visit either location. "You can't leave yet," my mother protested. "Audrey hasn't even told everyone about her new summer house in the Hamptons." "Bought with my latest bonus," Audrey preened. "Though I suppose that kind of success is hard to understand when you're still trying to make it in the startup world." I paused at the door. "You know what the funny thing is? All these years, you've never once asked what my company actually does. Why bother?" Audrey waved her hand dismissively. "It's not like you're changing the world or anything." If she only knew that Nova's AI technology was already transforming industries, that our innovations were reshaping the future of computing, that tomorrow her world would turn upside down. "Maybe you're right," I said, picking up my bag, a custom piece that cost more than her summer house. "Maybe some of us are just built different." "Finally admitting I'm better?" Audrey smirked. "No," I smiled, thinking about tomorrow's headlines. "Just admitting we measure success differently." "What's that supposed to mean?" "Oh, and Audrey." I paused at the doorway. "You might want to check tomorrow's Forbes magazine. I hear it's going to be illuminating." "Why?" she demanded. "Did they do another feature on successful women in finance?" Something like that. I walked out, leaving them to their self-congratulatory dinner. My phone buzzed again as I reached my car. My real car, not the modest one I drove to family functions. The Forbes editor wanted to confirm the photo shoot location. They were thinking the Nova Technologies lobby with its 3-story waterfall and wall of patents. I typed back a quick response, then started the engine. Through the window, I could see my family still gathered around the dinner table, basking in their perceived success, completely unaware that their world was about to change. Tomorrow they'd learn what real success looked like. Tomorrow they'd discover that the sister they'd dismissed had built an empire while they weren't watching. Tomorrow, they'd understand exactly what they'd missed while they were busy measuring life in summer houses and designer watches. But tonight I'd let them enjoy their last few hours of thinking they knew what success meant. After all, the best revelations are the ones you never see coming. The next morning I sat in my real office, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, watching the Forbes article go live. My phone started buzzing immediately as the news spread. Alexandra Chin, the 28-year-old billionaire revolutionizing artificial intelligence. Your sister's been calling non-stop, my assistant informed me. Along with your parents, 3 aunts and various cousins. I glanced at my phone's screen. 47 missed calls, 112 text messages and counting. The family group chat was exploding. Audrey, this has to be a mistake. Mom, Alexandra, call us immediately. Dad, why didn't you tell us? Aunt Patricia, is this some kind of joke? I smiled, opening the Forbes article on my tablet. The cover photo showed me in my element, standing in Nova's headquarters, surrounded by screens displaying our groundbreaking AI algorithms. The headline was perfect. Meet the quiet revolutionary worth $4.2 billion. My office phone lit up. Audrey again. This time I decided to answer. Hello, sister. Read any good magazines lately? What the hell, Alexandra? Her voice shook with a mixture of rage and disbelief. You're on the cover of Forbes? You're a billionaire? This has to be fake. Actually, I replied calmly, they undervalued me. Nova's worth closer to $5 billion after this morning's market opening. Silence then. But you drive a Toyota. You rent that tiny office downtown. That's just for family visits. Would you like to see my real office? I own the building your firm's been trying to lease space in. I heard something crash in the background. Probably one of her precious awards falling as she stumbled. I'm looking at the article, she continued, her voice rising hysterically. Nova Technologies' AI trading algorithms now power 40% of global financial transactions. That's what my firm uses. We just signed a multi-million-dollar contract with Nova. I know. I rejected your first 3 proposals personally. The price needed to be higher. Another crash. You're my vendor? I've been bragging about my trading success using your technology. Ironic, isn't it? All those times you offered me an entry-level position, you were actually working for me. My other line beeped. My parents calling. Hold on, Audrey. Mom and Dad are on the other line. Alexandra Marie Chin. My mother's voice carried that familiar tone of command that had stopped working on me years ago. What is the meaning of this? Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what, Mom? That I was successful? You never asked. Too busy celebrating Audrey's summer house to notice what I was building. But, $5 billion? My father cut in. That's more than our entire extended family's worth combined? Yes. Quite a bit more, actually. I pulled up another screen, the one showing the current value of my various investments. Dad, you might want to check your portfolio. Those safe stocks you invested in? I own controlling interest in most of them now. I heard my mother gasp. Alexandra, we never meant to. To what? Dismiss me? Mock my choices? Tell me I'd never amount to anything? I kept my voice level. You know what the funny thing is? If you'd bothered to Google my company even once in the last 5 years, you'd have known all of this. The line beeped again, Audrey rejoining the call. This isn't fair. I did everything right. Harvard finance, the corporate ladder. And I did everything my way. I cut in. Built something from nothing. Created actual value instead of just managing other people's money. Speaking of which, Audrey, Nova's reviewing all our contracts next week. Your firm might want to prepare for that. You wouldn't dare, she sputtered. Why not? Isn't this how real business works? That's what you've been trying to teach me all these years, right? My assistant knocked on the door. Miss Chin, the CNBC crew is here for your live interview. I have to go, I told my stunned family. Business to run, you understand. Oh, and Mom? About that tiny apartment I rent? I actually own the building. All 30 floors of it. Before they could respond, I hung up and turned to the wall of screens displaying Nova's global operations. My phone immediately lit up with new messages. Audrey, we need to talk about the contract. Mom, please let's have dinner to discuss this. Dad, I always believed in you, Princess. Aunt Patricia, your cousin needs a job. I turned off my phone and straightened my jacket, preparing for the interview. The headlines were still rolling in. Nova Technologies revolutionizes AI trading. Alexandra Chin, the silent billionaire, tech's newest power player, has been hiding in plain sight. My assistant returned. Your sister just showed up in the lobby. She's demanding to see you. I glanced at the security feed. Audrey stood there in her designer suit, clutching the Forbes magazine, looking completely out of her depth. Tell her she can schedule a meeting through proper channels. Just like any other vendor. And your parents? They're on their way too. I smiled, thinking about all the family dinners where I'd sat quietly, letting them believe what they wanted to believe. Tell them I'm busy. I have an empire to run. As I walked into the interview, I could see my family's messages still pouring in, desperate attempts to be part of a success story they'd never believed in. But I had more important things to focus on. After all, billions in assets don't manage themselves. The CNBC reporter beamed at me. Miss Chin, you've managed to build one of the most revolutionary companies in tech while staying completely under the radar. How did no one see this coming? I thought about my family, probably still reeling from their morning reading material. Some people only see what they expect to see. They measure success by summer houses and job titles, missing the real innovations happening right in front of them. And now, with everyone watching, I smiled, thinking about the next phase of Nova's expansion. The one that would make today's valuation look small. Now they'll have to watch someone they called a nobody reshape the future. Sometimes the best success story is the one nobody saw coming. My phone buzzed one final time. Audrey again. Please, I need this contract. My bonus depends on it. I turned off the phone and faced the cameras. After all, real billionaires don't have time for small thinking. We're too busy changing the world. Even if some people take a little longer to notice.
The morning David burst into my office, I was reviewing quarterly reports that showed exactly what he wanted: success. Numbers that proved I'd not only survived his betrayal, but thrived despite it. "This is bullshit, Marcus," he shouted, slamming his hands on my desk. "You're making millions while I'm struggling to keep my company afloat. We started this together. I deserve half." I looked at my older brother, noting the expensive suit that couldn't quite hide his desperation. His perfectly styled hair couldn't mask the gray creeping in at his temples. David had always been the golden child. Charming, confident, seemingly destined for success. Now he looked like a man watching his empire crumble. "Funny how you remember partnership now," I said quietly, "when 5 years ago you had no problem stealing the Anderson contract and leaving me to deal with the fallout." His face flushed. "That was business, nothing personal. You were too cautious, too slow. Anderson wanted results. Anderson wanted quick profits, and you gave them false projections to get their business. I cut him off. When it all fell apart, you let me take the blame. Remember that, David?" I did. Every excruciating detail was burned into my memory. 5 years ago, Anderson Corp had been our biggest potential client. Landing their contract would have transformed our small software development company into a major player. David had been lead on the project, handling all client communications while I managed the technical side. What I didn't know was that he'd been lying to both sides, promising Anderson impossible deadlines while hiding their true requirements from our development team. When everything imploded, he jumped ship with the remains of the contract, leaving me to face the lawsuits and debt. "That's ancient history," David said, waving his hand dismissively. "Look at you now. Pioneer Tech is one of the fastest growing companies in the industry. The same industry I helped you break into, by the way." I felt my jaw clench. The industry you tried to lock me out of after you left? When you called every contact we had and told them I was unreliable, incompetent? He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I was angry. You wouldn't listen to my ideas, always insisting on doing things your way. My way? I stood up slowly. You mean the legal way? The way that didn't involve fraud? David ran his hands through his hair, his composure cracking. Look, I know I made mistakes, but we're brothers. Family. Whatever happened between us, that doesn't change. I almost laughed. Family. He'd played that card before, when he needed something. When he wanted me to cover for his mistakes, to work longer hours while he took credit for my innovations. Why now, David? Why come asking for half my company today? He hesitated, and I knew I had him. Stone Tech is making moves, he finally admitted. They're acquiring smaller companies, consolidating the market. My company, we're not in a position to compete. Ah, there it was. David's company was failing, and he needed a lifeline. Stone Tech, our biggest competitor, was known for aggressive takeovers that left nothing behind. So you thought you'd claim half of Pioneer Tech? I asked. Based on what? The partnership you abandoned 5 years ago? I have documentation, he said, pulling out a folder. Emails, meeting notes from when we started the company. Proof that I was an equal partner. I smiled then, reaching for my own files. Funny you should mention documentation. I have some of my own to share. I pulled out a thick manila envelope and placed it on my desk. Before you say another word, David, let me show you what I found when I started rebuilding after your betrayal. His eyes narrowed as I spread out the documents, emails, bank statements, and contracts that told the real story of his deception. 5 years ago, you didn't just steal the Anderson contract, I said quietly. You were embezzling from our company for months before that. Siphoning money into private accounts, charging personal expenses to company credit cards. The color drained from his face. That's not. You can't prove. But I can. I pointed to specific transactions. You got sloppy, David. Thought I was too focused on the technical side to notice the financial irregularities. But after you left, I had to understand exactly what happened to save what was left of the company. Those records are old, he said, but his voice had lost its confidence. They don't matter now. The statute of limitations on fraud hasn't expired, I replied. And there's more. Your lies to Anderson. I found the original communications, the fake projections, the altered timelines. Everything you used to convince them to sign with you instead of staying with our company. David sank into the chair across from my desk, his earlier bravado evaporating. Marcus, be reasonable. We can work something out. Like you worked things out with Anderson. How did that go, by the way? I knew exactly how it had gone. Anderson had sued David's company last year over breach of contract. He barely survived the settlement. You're really going to do this? He asked. Destroy your own brother. You tried to destroy me first, I reminded him. The difference is I have proof of everything you did. Proof I've kept quiet about for 5 years while I rebuilt what you tried to tear down. His expression darkened. If you expose this, it won't just hurt me. Think about Mom and Dad. The family name. Don't, I cut him off. Don't pretend this is about family. It's about you needing a way out of the mess you've made. Again, I thought about our parents, who had always believed David's version of events, who had called me ungrateful when I refused to reconcile with my brother after his betrayal. They didn't know about the fraud, the embezzlement, the countless lies. Here's what's going to happen, I said, gathering the documents. You're going to leave my office and never come back. You're going to stop telling people you helped build Pioneer Tech, and you're going to find another way to save your company from Stone Tech. Or what? A hint of his old arrogance crept back into his voice. Or these documents go to the FBI, the SEC, and every client you've lied to over the past 5 years. Your choice. He stood up slowly, straightening his designer tie. You wouldn't dare. It would devastate the family. I met his gaze steadily. Try me. As he reached for the door, he paused. You've changed, little brother. The Marcus I knew wouldn't be so ruthless. The Marcus you knew died the day you betrayed him, I replied. You might want to remember that before you try coming after what's mine again. After he left, I sat back in my chair, my hands shaking slightly. On my computer screen, an email notification popped up. Our latest acquisition had been finalized. Pioneer Tech had just bought another small software company, one that specialized in security systems. The irony wasn't lost on me. While David had been destroying relationships to get ahead, I'd been building them. While he'd taken shortcuts and burned bridges, I focused on sustainable growth and innovation. My phone buzzed. A text from our mother. David said you threatened him. Why can't you let the past go? I didn't respond. Instead, I opened my laptop and began reviewing the security company's integration plans. Let David run to our parents with his lies. The truth had a way of coming out eventually. The next morning, my assistant Sarah rushed into my office. Mr. Marcus, you need to see this. She handed me her tablet, open to a business news site. The headline made my blood run cold. Stone Tech announces merger with David Chen Software Solutions. My brother had made his choice. Now it was time to make mine. I stared at the headline, understanding hitting me like a physical blow. David hadn't come to me for help. He'd come to assess Pioneer Tech's vulnerabilities before aligning with our biggest competitor. Stone Tech was notorious for hostile takeovers, using insider information to target companies. By merging with David's company, they gained access to everything he knew about Pioneer Tech's operations, client relationships, and technical infrastructure. I immediately called an emergency board meeting. As I waited for everyone to arrive, I reviewed the documents I had on David's past fraud. They were my insurance policy, but using them would mean exposing everything, including how long I'd known about his crimes without reporting them. The merger announcement goes live in an hour, I told the board. Stone Tech isn't just acquiring David's company, they're positioning for a hostile takeover of Pioneer Tech. How do you know? Asked Janet, our CFO. Because my brother just spent yesterday demanding half ownership of our company, I replied. He was gathering intelligence for Stone Tech, looking for weaknesses. The room erupted in concerned murmurs. Everyone knew the story of David's betrayal 5 years ago, but few knew the full extent of his deceptions. We have options, I continued, but you need to know everything first. Over the next hour, I laid out the complete history. David's embezzlement, the fraud, the carefully documented trail of his crimes. I explained how I'd discovered everything while rebuilding the company, how I'd kept the evidence as protection. Why didn't you turn him in? Asked Robert, our head of legal. Because exposing him meant risking Pioneer Tech's reputation when we were most vulnerable, I said. But now we can use this information to stop Stone Tech's takeover. My plan was simple but risky. We would release evidence of David's financial crimes to the SEC, but only the parts related to his current company. It would torpedo the merger with Stone Tech without exposing Pioneer Tech to scrutiny about our past. Stone Tech's due diligence will uncover these issues eventually, I explained. We're just accelerating the timeline. Once they realize David's company is radioactive with fraud, they'll back out. The board voted unanimously to proceed. Within hours, our lawyers had prepared the necessary documentation and submitted it to regulatory authorities. The effect was immediate. Stone Tech's stock plummeted as news of their merger with a fraudulent company spread. David's company faced immediate investigation, and the merger was suspended pending review. That evening, as I worked late in my office, David stormed in again. But this time, he looked desperate rather than arrogant. You've ruined me, he snarled. Stone Tech is backing out, my investors are fleeing, and the SEC is investigating everything. You ruined yourself, I replied calmly. I just made sure everyone else could see it too. I'll tell them everything, he threatened. About how you knew and kept quiet. About all of it. Go ahead, I said standing. Pioneer Tech is strong enough to weather the storm now. Are you? He left without another word. The next day, David Chen Software Solutions filed for bankruptcy. Stone Tech's takeover plans for Pioneer Tech were quietly abandoned. 1 month later, I sat in my office reviewing acquisition proposals, not for my company, but from it. Pioneer Tech was now strong enough to start absorbing smaller firms, growing sustainably through careful expansion. My phone buzzed with a text from our father. David's lost everything. His house, his reputation, his future. I hope you're happy. I typed back a simple response. He lost those things himself. I just refused to let him take my company down with him. Looking out over the city skyline, I thought about the journey from that devastating betrayal 5 years ago to now. David had taught me an invaluable lesson. Success built on lies eventually crumbles, but success built on innovation and integrity lasts. My assistant knocked on the door. Mr. Marcus, the integration team for our new security division is ready for you. I gathered my files, ready to focus on Pioneer Tech's future. David had chosen his path, and I had chosen mine. In the end, the truth had done what it always does. It had come out, bringing justice with it.
The security feed on my laptop showed my parents fidgeting nervously in the executive lobby of Kingston Industries. My mother kept smoothing her designer dress, while my father checked his Rolex for the 5th time in as many minutes. "Miss Kingston will be with you shortly," my assistant Charlotte told them, suppressing a smile. They had no idea they were about to meet their daughter. The same daughter whose trust fund they'd given away 6 months ago. "How long do you want them to wait?" Charlotte's voice came through my intercom. I watched them through the feed, remembering that day in their luxury penthouse when they'd casually destroyed my future. Or so they thought. "Let them stew for another 15 minutes, I replied. "They made me wait 25 years for my trust fund. They can wait a few more minutes to meet the CEO who's buying their company." The memory played in my mind, sharp as broken glass. "We need to discuss something," Mom had said over Sunday brunch, her voice carrying that fake sweetness that always meant trouble. "It's about your trust fund." I'd looked up from my coffee, suddenly alert. The trust fund, $2 million from my grandparents, was supposed to be mine when I turned 25. That milestone was just 2 weeks away. "Your brother needs it more," she continued, not meeting my eyes. "His new business venture requires significant capital, and well, you're doing fine with your little startup." "Little startup?" I'd repeated, stunned. "Techfin Solutions employs 50 people. We're revolutionizing financial technology." "Playing with computers isn't a real business," Dad had cut in. "Thomas has a concrete investment opportunity. Real estate. Something solid." Thomas, my golden child brother who'd never worked a day in his life, who'd failed at 3 different business ventures using our parents' money. "That trust fund was from my grandparents," I'd protested. "They left it specifically to me." "And we're your parents," Mom had said firmly. "We know what's best. The paperwork is already done. The money has been transferred to Thomas's account." I'd sat there, coffee growing cold, as they explained how they'd legally maneuvered around my grandparents' wishes. How they'd decided my brother's latest scheme deserved my inheritance more than I did. "You don't need it anyway," Dad had added. "Your lifestyle is modest." Modest. Because I lived in a small apartment and drove a used car, investing everything back into my company. Because I believed in building something real, not playing with inherited wealth. They never bothered to look at Techfin's financial reports. Never noticed that our revolutionary payment processing platform was attracting major investors. Never realized that while they were stealing my trust fund, I was building an empire. The acquisition offer for their company had landed on my desk last week. Anderson Financial, the investment firm my parents had spent 30 years building, was failing. Their old-school approach couldn't compete with modern fintech solutions. Solutions like the ones Techfin had pioneered. But they didn't know Techfin was mine. Just like they didn't know that Kingston Industries, the mysterious corporation about to buy them out, was my holding company. "Your brother's real estate venture failed, by the way," Charlotte reported, interrupting my thoughts. "The $2 million is gone." Of course it was. Thomas had probably blown through it in months. "How are the numbers looking?" I asked, though I already knew. Anderson Financial's stock has dropped another 12% since news of the sale went public. Their clients are jumping ship, moving to digital platforms. Charlotte's smile was audible. Platforms like Techfin's. I turned back to the security feed. My parents were now standing, examining the modern art pieces that decorated the lobby. Pieces I'd chosen myself, though they'd never know that. "Their net worth has dropped 60% in the past year," Charlotte continued. "They're practically begging for this buyout. They needed this deal desperately. Kingston Industries' offer was their only hope of salvaging anything from their crumbling company. The same company they'd once used to justify stealing my inheritance. Miss Kingston is a visionary," I'd overheard Dad telling his golf buddies last week. "She's revolutionizing the industry. Anderson Financial would be honored to become part of her organization." If only he knew. My phone buzzed, a text from Thomas. "Hey sis, heard you're still working at that tech company. Need any help?" I'm between ventures right now. I deleted it without responding. He'd burned through my trust fund and now wanted to help me? The irony was almost funny. They're getting anxious, Charlotte reported. Your father's asked 3 times when Miss Kingston will arrive. I stood up, smoothing my tailored suit. Give me 5 more minutes, then bring them to the conference room. I walked to my private bathroom, checking my appearance one last time. The woman in the mirror barely resembled the daughter they'd dismissed so easily. Gone were the casual startup clothes and minimal makeup. Today I looked every inch the CEO about to acquire their company. Everything's ready in the conference room, Charlotte confirmed. The purchase agreement is on the table. Shall I have legal standing by? No need, I replied. This meeting won't take long. I gathered the documents I'd need: financial reports showing Anderson Financial's decline, proof of their mismanagement, and most importantly, papers revealing Kingston Industries' true ownership. My parents had taken $2 million from me thinking it would mean nothing. They were about to learn that I'd built something worth 100 times that amount. Send them in, I instructed Charlotte. Through the security feed I watched her approach my parents. Miss Kingston will see you now. They straightened up, putting on their best impression of successful business people. Mom adjusted her pearls one last time. Dad tugged at his expensive suit jacket. Thank you for waiting, Charlotte told them professionally. Miss Kingston appreciates your patience. If only they knew they were about to meet the daughter whose future they thought they'd controlled. The daughter who now controlled theirs. I sat down at the head of the conference table, arranging the papers precisely. Everything had to be perfect for this moment. A soft knock at the door. Mr. and Mrs. Anderson to see you, Miss Kingston. I smiled, thinking of my grandparents, wondering if they'd be proud of what I'd built with my own hands rather than their money. Send them in. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just success. It's making them watch as you succeed beyond their wildest dreams. My parents walked into the conference room with practiced confidence. The same fake assurance they'd shown when taking my trust fund. Mom's heels clicked against the marble floor. Dad's gold cufflinks caught the morning light. I kept my chair turned toward the window, letting them take in the expansive view of the city skyline. Miss Kingston, my father began, using his best business voice. We can't thank you enough for. I turned around slowly, enjoying the way their faces transformed from professional politeness to absolute shock. Sarah. Mom whispered, her perfectly maintained facade cracking. Actually, I replied calmly, it's Miss Kingston now. Please take a seat. They didn't move, frozen in their disbelief. Sarah, what is this? Dad demanded, finding his voice. Where is Miss Kingston? You're looking at her. I gestured to the chairs again. Sit down. We have a lot to discuss. They sank into their seats, looking like they'd seen a ghost. In a way, they had, the ghost of the daughter they'd underestimated. This is impossible, Mom said. You run that little tech startup. TechFin Solutions? I smiled. Yes, I do. Along with Kingston Industries and 6 other technology companies. Would you like to see the numbers? I pressed a button and the wall screen came to life with financial data. TechFin's current valuation, $850 million. Kingston Industries, $3.2 billion. Total portfolio worth, just over $5 billion. Dad's face had gone pale. But you never said. You never asked. I opened the folder in front of me. Too busy giving my trust fund to Thomas for his concrete investments. How did that work out, by the way? Mom flinched. Thomas made some mistakes. He lost $2 million in 3 months, I corrected. My $2 million. Money our grandparents left specifically for me. We were trying to help him, Dad protested. He needed to learn responsibility, I cut in. Instead, you enabled his failures while dismissing my success. I spread out Anderson Financial's recent performance reports. Your company is failing. Digital payment platforms are making traditional investment firms obsolete. Platforms like TechFin's. They stared at the numbers, reality slowly sinking in. The Kingston Industries buyout offer is the only thing standing between you and bankruptcy, I continued. Your clients are leaving in droves, moving to modern financial services. Services I built while you were stealing my inheritance. We didn't steal. Mom began. You took money that was legally mine and gave it to my brother without my consent. What would you call it? Silence filled the room. Outside, the city hummed with activity, unaware of the drama unfolding 50 stories up. Why didn't you tell us? Dad finally asked. About your success. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Would you have listened? You called Techfin a little startup, the same day you took my trust fund. You dismissed everything I built because it didn't fit your narrow view of success. Charlotte entered with more documents. The final purchase agreement, Ms. Kingston. Thank you, Charlotte. I opened the folder. Now, let's discuss the future of Anderson Financial. You're really buying our company? Mom's voice trembled. Yes. But not to save it, to transform it. I pushed the agreement toward them. Anderson Financial will be absorbed into Techfin's digital platform. The old way of doing business ends today. Dad reached for the papers with shaking hands. The price. It's less than we asked for. It's more than your company is worth, I corrected. I'm being generous considering your mismanagement. Generous. He looked up sharply. We're your parents. Are you? Parents support their children's dreams. They don't steal their inheritance or dismiss their achievements. Mom started crying, perfectly applied makeup running down her cheeks. We were wrong. About everything. Can't we work something out? We are. I pointed to the agreement. You can sign the papers and let me save what's left of your company, or you can watch it collapse entirely. Your choice. And Thomas? Dad asked. What about your brother? Thomas made his choices. He'll have to live with them just like you'll have to live with yours. They signed the papers slowly, defeated. Each signature represented a piece of their empire crumbling, their pride dissolving. You'll receive your final payments within 30 days, I said, gathering the documents. After that, Anderson Financial ceases to exist. That's it. Mom whispered. 30 years of building this company. No, I corrected. That's not it. There's one more thing. I pulled out another folder. The last piece of my plan. Inside is a job offer, I explained. Entry-level positions in Techfin's client transition team. You'll help traditional investors adapt to digital platforms. They stared at me in disbelief. You're offering us jobs? Dad's voice cracked. Working for you? I'm offering you a chance to learn. To understand the future you refuse to see. Starting salary is $60,000 a year. Modest by your standards, but enough to live on. 60,000? Mom looked faint. But our lifestyle will have to change. Just like the industry is changing. I stood up. You have 24 hours to decide. Charlotte will show you out. As they walked to the door, shoulders slumped, Dad turned back. You planned all this, didn't you? Buying our company, making us work for you? No, I replied honestly. I built something successful, something revolutionary. Your company's failure and my ability to buy it? That's just karma. After they left, Charlotte brought in coffee. They looked shell-shocked. Wouldn't you be? I smiled. Finding out your little startup daughter now owns your company? Will they take the jobs? I looked out at the city thinking about pride and change and consequences. They will, I said confidently. Because they're about to learn what I learned 6 months ago. Sometimes losing everything is the first step to building something better. 3 days later, my parents started their new jobs at Techfin. Mom struggled with the casual startup atmosphere. Dad couldn't believe how many of his former clients preferred our digital platform. Thomas tried calling when he heard the news, probably looking for another handout. I had Charlotte block his number. Last week, during a company-wide meeting, I watched my parents in the audience, wearing their Techfin employee badges. They looked different, humbler maybe, or just finally aware of how much the world had changed. The future of finance isn't in traditional firms or inherited wealth, I told the crowd. It's in innovation, in seeing possibilities others dismiss. My parents nodded along, finally understanding what they'd failed to see before. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just proving them wrong. It's making them work for the success they once dismissed. And sometimes, just sometimes, they might actually learn from it.
10 years. That's how long I'd waited for this moment, standing outside the Montgomery Industries headquarters, watching my family arrive for what they thought was a routine shareholders meeting. My mother, still elegant at 65, her silver hair perfectly styled. My father slightly stooped now, but wearing his trademark navy suit. And behind them, my brother James, the golden child, the heir, the liar who'd stolen my life. None of them had aged as much as they should have. I guess money helps with that. My hand instinctively went to the scar on my neck, a permanent reminder of the accident that had supposedly killed me. The accident James had arranged when he discovered Grandpa's original will. "Are you ready, Ms. Montgomery?" Stephen, my lawyer, stood beside me. He'd been Grandpa's lawyer too, the only other person who knew the truth. "I've been ready for 10 years, I replied, straightening my black designer suit. The same brand Mother always wore. She'd be able to tell at a glance how much it cost. "Let's go make some ghosts see a ghost." The security guard's eyes widened as he saw my ID. He'd been working here since I was a child. Miss Rachel." "Hello, George," I smiled. "It's been a while." But what they said wrong. The elevator ride to the top floor was silent. I could feel Stephen watching me, probably wondering if I'd break down. He'd been there through everything, my recovery, the years of building evidence, the careful planning. "Your grandfather would be proud," he said quietly as the elevator doors opened. I doubted that. Grandpa had taught us that family was everything. But he'd also taught us about justice, and today was about justice. The boardroom fell silent as I walked in. 20 faces turned toward me, then froze in shock. Mother's coffee cup slipped from her hand, shattering on the floor. Father's face went white as paper. And James looked like he'd seen a ghost. Which, according to the death certificate he'd forged, he had. "Rachel," Mother whispered, gripping the table for support. But you're dead?" I finished for her. "Sorry to disappoint, Mother. The accident 10 years ago wasn't quite as fatal as James reported." "This is impossible." James stood up, his handsome face contorted with rage and fear. "You died. I saw the car." He stopped, realizing what he'd said. Father's head snapped toward him. "You saw what?" "He saw what he wanted to see," I said, taking a seat at the head of the table, Grandpa's old chair. Just like he saw his chance when he found Grandpa's original will, the one that left 51% of Montgomery Industries to me. Mother's hands flew to her throat, her tell when she was lying. "What are you talking about? Your grandfather left everything to James. You were always so unreliable. He knew James would protect the company." Actually, Stephen stepped forward, placing a thick folder on the table. Harrison Montgomery left a very different will, and a letter explaining exactly why he left control of the company to Rachel. He began distributing copies of the documents. I watched as 20 pairs of eyes widened at once. "But that's not the best part," I continued, enjoying the way James was starting to sweat. "Grandpa knew someone might try to challenge his decision. So he created a trust fund, a secret one, in my name. And for the past 10 years, while everyone thought I was dead, that trust fund has been buying shares in Montgomery Industries." James collapsed back into his chair. He knew what was coming. As of 9 o'clock this morning, Stephen announced the trust fund controlled by Rachel Montgomery owns 67% of Montgomery Industries shares. The room erupted in chaos. Board members started shouting questions. Mother began crying dramatically. Father just stared at James, decades of trust crumbling before his eyes. But I wasn't done, not even close. "Now," I said, my voice cutting through the noise, "let's talk about the accident James arranged, about the truck driver he paid to run me off the road, about the forged death certificate, and about the $10 million that disappeared from the company accounts that same week." James jumped to his feet. "You can't prove any of that." I smiled, pulling out another folder. "Actually, I can. You see, Grandpa didn't just leave me money. He left me his private investigators, and they've been very, very busy." As Stephen began distributing the evidence, bank records, witness statements, photos, I leaned back in Grandpa's chair. This was just the beginning. The real storm was about to hit. And my dear family had no idea what was coming next. "You killed your sister for money." Father's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the boardroom like a knife. "My son tried to murder my daughter." James was still standing, his expensive suit now damp with sweat. "Father, she's lying. This is some kind of con. She's not really Rachel. The DNA test results are on page 12. I said calmly, watching the board members flip through their packets. along with the hospital records from Switzerland, where I spent 6 months recovering. Would you like to explain the $10 million that was wired to a Swiss account the day after my accident, James? Mother had stopped crying, her face now a mask of calculation. She'd always been the pragmatic one. Rachel, darling, she tried, her voice honey-sweet. Surely we can discuss this as a family. There's no need to air our private matters in front of the board. Private matters? I laughed, the sound echoing off the mahogany walls. Like how you and James conspired to hide Grandpa's real will. The security footage of you both in his study the night he died is quite interesting, especially the part where you removed documents from his safe. That hit home. Mother's face went from calculated concern to shock. She hadn't known of the cameras Grandpa had installed. Harrison was losing his mind, she said desperately. He wasn't thinking clearly, leaving the company to a 22-year-old girl. A 22-year-old girl with an MBA and 3 years' experience in every department of this company. I corrected her. Unlike James, who spent his time partying and relying on his name. How dare you? James snarled, but father cut him off. The money, James? Tell me about the money. James's face crumpled. In that moment, he looked like the little boy who used to break things and blame me. Father, I had debts. Gambling debts. Dangerous people were threatening me. When I found Grandpa's will, you decided killing your sister was easier than facing your mistakes, father finished, his voice dead. Mr. Montgomery, Stephen interrupted smoothly, the police are here to discuss those matters with your son. Right on cue, 2 detectives entered the boardroom. The look of betrayal on James's face as they approached him was almost comical. You can't do this, he shouted as they began reading his rights. I'm a Montgomery. No, I said, standing up. You're a criminal, and criminals go to jail, regardless of their last name. As the detectives led James away, Mother made one last attempt. Rachel, please. He's your brother. Family forgives. Family forgives, I repeated slowly. Like you forgave me for being better qualified than James? Like you forgave Grandpa for seeing my potential? Tell me, Mother, did you even look for my body after the accident? Her silence was answer enough. The board will take a 1-hour recess, I announced. When we return, we'll discuss the company's new direction. Those who were involved in embezzlement or fraud during my brother's leadership might want to use this time to contact their lawyers. The board members fled the room like rats from a sinking ship. Only my parents remained. Father stood up slowly, looking every one of his 70 years. I failed you, he said simply. I failed both of you, by favoring James, by not questioning, by being blind. Yes, I agreed, you did. Can you ever forgive us? Mother asked, but her eyes were on the company documents, not me. I touched the scar on my neck again. Grandpa left me a letter with the trust fund paperwork. He wrote that leadership isn't about power or money, it's about responsibility, about doing what's right, even when it's hard. I picked up a final folder from my briefcase. These are the terms of your retirement, effective immediately. You'll retain your shares and receive pensions, but you'll have no role in company operations. Retirement? Mother's mask finally cracked. You can't force us out. We built this company. No, Grandpa built this company. You just lived off it. I handed them the papers. You have until the end of the day to clear out your offices. Security will assist you. After they left, I stood at the boardroom window, looking out over the city. 10 years ago, I'd stood in the same spot with Grandpa. Business isn't just business, Rachel, he'd said. It's people. Their lives, their futures, their dreams. Never forget that. I hadn't forgotten. The company records showed that under James's leadership, pensions had been cut, workers laid off, safety measures ignored. All to fund his lifestyle and cover his gambling debts. My first act as CEO would be to reverse those decisions. My second would be to establish a foundation in Grandpa's name, providing education and opportunities to employees' children. The Montgomery name would mean something different now, something better. Later that evening, as I sat in Grandpa's old office, my office now, I opened his letter again. The last line still brought tears to my eyes. Remember, my dear Rachel, revenge is a moment, but legacy is forever. Make yours count. I looked at the family photo on the wall, taken 20 years ago, all of us smiling, none of us knowing what lay ahead. Tomorrow, I'd take it down. Tomorrow, a new Montgomery legacy would begin. And this time, It would be built on something stronger than blood ties and broken promises. It would be built on justice, responsibility, and truth. The very things my family had tried to kill along with me.